Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode in a very long-running episodic event series known as 52 Must-See Movies and Why They Matter. We discuss 52 classic movies and why they matter, why they are essential to your viewing, and we get all of those movies from this book here. The book is written by Jeremy Arnold with a foreword by the late great Robert Osborne, who was the longtime host at Turner Classic Movies, who recently passed away. And he was very much an inspiration for generations of classic film lovers. So every week or so, we come out with a new video. And once again, joining me is my friend Stephen Billings.
Hello, people. I can't wait to talk about what I like to call It Happened One Night Too, which is Roman Holiday. We're talking Roman Holiday.
Yes, we are talking Roman Holiday, which came out in 1953, directed by William Wyler and starring Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck, two extremely iconic individuals in all of film history. These are names that you probably have heard of before you ever saw them in any movie. I know I did. And this film is actually the introductory film or the premiere film for Audrey Hepburn as an actress. You know, in the opening credits, it says introducing Audrey Hepburn. She, I believe, had maybe a couple of uncredited things before this, but this is her first uncredited this is her first credited role for her career, and this is really the film that broke her out and made her a star. This is the film that won her first and I believe only Oscar, and it is quite the debut. This is a film that I watched a few years ago, and I know it was my friend Steven's first time watching this. And Steven, what are your general thoughts about it? Did you like the movie?
Oh yeah, it's a very charming film, and you know, jokingly, yes, it's. We're going to get into a little bit. You know, it's very much the same. We talked about this in another video part of this series with It Happened One Night, which is about a rich girl who, you know, is trying to get to her soon-to-be husband and gets caught up with this news reporter guy who wants to tell her story. And in this film, you got a princess who is wanting to get away, kind of like Jasmine in Aladdin a little bit, wants to go out into the marketplace, wants to see the real world, wants to, you know, get into the environment. And then she kind of just runs into this guy, you know, she's kind of high on some medication and is just passing out. And this news journalist type finds her and then eventually finds out she's this princess and wants to exploit that. It's very similar plots, but it's a very charming film. I had a lot of fun with it. Kept my attention the whole time. Has lovely scenery. We're in Rome. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun with this film.
Yeah, this film was entirely shot on location in Rome. The head of Paramount at the time wanted this film to be kind of different, so he wanted to set it all in Rome. So if it's not directly on location, it was shot in a studio in Rome. The whole production was there. And as Steven said, yes, this story kind of focuses on Audrey Hepburn, who is a princess of an unknown country. We don't know what country she's a princess of. All we know, she's going on this grand tour of Europe and meeting, you know, going to all the famous cities and just shaking hands and talking to press.
I know this
nonsensical stuff.
I know who she's the princess of.
What is that?
Of Nunya.
Nunya, as in
Nunya business.
That is exactly true. And we don't know, and it doesn't really matter, because what is important is that she's fed up. Like Steven said, she's fed up with being a princess and doing all the talking points and all the nonsensical, boring stuff that royalty has to do to keep up appearances and all this kind of stuff. So she decides she's going to sneak out one night, and she gets in the back of a carriage or a truck, and she kind of gets brought into Rome, and she really is completely alone. She doesn't know anything. She doesn't really have the geographical skills, social skills. She doesn't even carry money or anything like that. And this is very much a fish out of water scenario if I've ever seen one. And she ends up coming across Gregory Peck, who is kind of this journalist, if you will, and he is supposed to actually be covering a press conference with her the next day. And he's kind of an interesting character. You get the feeling that he's kind of shady. He's kind of lazy, if you will, but he's also kind of a good guy as well. He's a bit gray in all of his motivations for why he's doing what he's doing throughout this movie, and he ends up, finding this beautiful young woman passed out on a stone bench somewhere because she's essentially asleep. She's tired, and she's groggy from being overly tired and overly sleepy, and that kind of leads to a very comedic first meetup between these two characters. And she is like half in the bag, she cannot stand up, and he doesn't know what to really do with her. He puts her in a cab, and the cabbie's like, okay, where are we going? And they don't really know where to go. So he decides, I will take her back to my apartment where I stay, where I'm living right now, because I really don't know what else to do. And it's kind of a very chivalrous thing to do, helping someone who is clearly in need of some type of help. And he brings her back there, and he doesn't know who she is. Right away, he does not know who she is. To him, she's just some drunk woman who's passed out in the streets. But the next day, when he goes to his newspaper editor, and the guy and all of the press conference he was supposed to go to was canceled, and it was canceled because they can't find the princess wherever she's staying, and they are kind of panicking. So you know what we'll say? We'll say she's sick. She all of a sudden got sick. She's indisposed. She can't see anybody. She can't do anything. All press conferences are canceled. The tour is on hold. Whatever. And he doesn't know that either. That leads to another very comedic scene with him and his editor. There's a lot of comedy in this film, and that's what I really love about this film the most, is that the comedy leads to a lot of heartfelt, not just a warm feeling I get while watching this movie. It's so charming, like Steven said. It's so charming in all of its ways, and I think a lot of that has to do with the Audrey Hepburn character, who is extremely wide-eyed and naive, and has just this look of wonderment constantly. After he gets back from meeting his editor, and he realizes that she is the princess, because he sees a newspaper and he sees a picture of her. It's interesting that he hadn't seen a picture of her this whole time, yet she's some famous princess. But he gets back to his apartment where he's staying, and she's wide awake now. She's well aware of what's happening, and she decides that she's going to go out and explore Rome all by herself. She's not going to tell him that she's a princess. She's not going to reveal anything like that. But we know, and he knows, who she really is. And he decides to let her go out and walk around. And he gives her some money, and we get to see how naive she is, because she just starts buying things. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when you're a little kid and you just, get some money and you don't really know what certain things cost, and you just decide to start buying recklessly. Steven, were you picking up on all these kind of comedic vibes to it? It's not a film with a lot of sincerity quite yet. Most of the film deals very much in lighthearted comedy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say right off the bat, the Gregory Peck character, I was conflicted with him because, yes, it's chivalrous, and then maybe from the outside kind of creepy that he just takes this girl back to his apartment who's obviously, either drunk or, in this case, overly medicated. They give her medication at the beginning of the movie to put her to sleep because she's going hysterical because she hates what she's doing. So when she leaves, she's overly medicated. But and then but we know, because we're the viewer, that he's doing it and he's being nice. One of my favorite comedic moments is in that scene when he brings her back, and when he comes back to the room, she's in his bed, and he specifically said, "You're sleeping on the couch." And she's in his bed, and then he pulls the couch beside the bed and flips her off of it. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, and I love how, just contrasting that, after he finds out that she's the princess, he comes back and
puts her back
in the bed to pretend as if she was there the whole time. Because he's like, oh shit, what have I done?
Yeah, but yeah, she, and then he, once he's figured out she's the princess, he gives, he lets her go because she wants to go. He can't, he's got to keep her at a distance, because he doesn't want to say that, oh, I want to keep an eye on you because you're the princess, which is a difference from It Happened One Night, and in Happened One Night, he says, hey, I know who you are. You know, in this case, he's like, I'm going to watch her from a distance. He lets her go. She goes out and buys things. She's buying ice cream. She's buying, hats and, whatever. And then he finally meets up with her again, pretends that he didn't mean to run into her, but he did,
Yeah, what we haven't said is that he actually made a bet with his editor saying, I can get you that interview. I can get you that interview. I'll bet you, I forgot what it was. It was
it was like $500 or something.
Yeah, I forgot what the currency is in Italy at the time, but yeah, it was 500, whatever the currency was. And so he's got some money at stake in this. You know what I mean? So there's a whole, he's not doing it through true altruism. You know what I mean? He's not doing things through the goodness of his heart. I mean, initially he was, and now he's motivated monetarily. I mean, apparently he already owes people money.
That's where my conflict is because I know, even though he seems like he's a decent guy, he's doing something for the wrong reasons right now. And it's like I kind of don't know if I like him, but. Of course, as the movie goes on, things.
Yeah, I think as the movie goes on, his motivations change. His motivations change from, selfishness to romantic, through love and affection and friendship, things like that. But when she goes out in the town, it leads to her getting a haircut for the first time. Not for the first time, but in the film, it changes her complexion, and makes her look more modern, and makes her kind of blend in with people. And it's also kind of the first time we see Audrey Hepburn with the short hair that she's so known for. At the time, in the 1950s, this was kind of the explosions of the blonde bombshells. You know what I mean? Or not even the blonde bombshells, but the women who looked a certain way. Long hair, very curvaceous, things like that. And but Audrey Hepburn was always very much the opposite of that. Her image was very different than the Marilyn Monroes of the time, the Jane Russells and things like that. And in this film, we really see that for the first time. She would go on to do, I would say, more iconic roles, specifically Breakfast at Tiffany's, I think is her most well-known role. I mean, that's the iconic image that you see all the time associated with Audrey Hepburn. But I love her in this film. I love the way she is, and I love how really coming out of obscurity, she's so warm and so charming, and she's so lovely in every scene that she's in. And she also has some sincerity behind her, but that a lot of that sincerity is towards the end of the film. But the middle part of this film, which we're getting into now, is where a lot of you kind of have everything takes place in real time, and her and Gregory Peck and his friend, who is a photographer, portrayed by an actor I can't remember, Eddie Albert, portrayed by Eddie Albert, who was also nominated for an Oscar for this film, interestingly enough. I don't know particularly why, but he was good in the film as well. Everyone is great in this film. Yeah, I know Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn are very well known for obvious reasons. Gregory Peck, at this time, I think had already been nominated for a few Oscars. I mean, definitely for The Gentleman's Agreement and a few things he did in the 40s. So he was kind of the big star in this film. He was the anchor. He was the name you would use to sell a film like this. Audrey Hepburn kind of got fame afterwards, and in this film, it's really her and his chemistry that really drives this film forward. Because past this point where, he meets up with her, I believe, on the Spanish Steps, and he's like, oh, I didn't know you would be here or whatever, but he's following her because he has a stake in this. And he follows her, and they meet up, and they kind of spend this day and night together, and it's very dreamlike, very romantic. It's very, very nice, and they go on a kind of a wild adventure. They go out. They go out to lunch, and she orders like champagne, and he's like, champagne 11. I guess that's what princesses drink, apparently. and I love how I love the interaction he has with his photographer friend, because his photographer friend notices her right away. Like, he's like, man, you look like somebody familiar. And there's a constant like physical comedy gag that he constantly has throughout this film. That's a running joke where every time the photographer is going to say something that he doesn't want him to say, he like trips him, or he like, knocks it. he knocks him over or bumps into him or spills coffee on him or whatever. And it's a nice kind of interplay with the characters that they have. And it's very light and it's very happy and it's very friendly. You know what I mean? This film is a breeze to watch for me as well. I don't know how you felt watching it the first time. I found watching it again to be just as enjoyable. You know what I mean? Just as enjoyable. It's a wonderfully paced film. For a film that's almost 2 hours long, I really didn't feel it. And I have to say that it's one of my favorite films from Audrey Hepburn, and it's a nice pairing with Gregory Peck. Stephen, do you have anything to say about this on-screen chemistry, which is very good?
Yeah, it's very good, and like you said, especially for somebody that's, you know, you have a big star and you have somebody that's basically it's their first film, and to have that chemistry is just it was a lightning in a bottle kind of situation, probably. The very rare times where you have people that don't know each other just have it. Audrey Hepburn at this time, I mean, and maybe even throughout the rest of her career, kind of reminds me of today's Emma Stone. I kind of feel like her and Emma Stone have a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I would say that Audrey Hepburn is kind of the early version of, not the manic pixie dream girl or anything like that, but kind of a more lighthearted but strong female character. You would see, I think, a lot of these after Audrey Hepburn, someone like in certain Woody Allen films like Diane Keaton or the Mia Farrow, or as you said, Emma Stone, who was also in coincidentally some Woody Allen films as well. And you get that kind of feeling from her as well. She's very much an archetype. You know what I mean? How many young women grow up watching her films? I mean, it's kind of different, the way we grew up watching, certain old iconic actors. They would grow up watching old iconic actors like Audrey Hepburn, Katharine Hepburn, Marilyn Monroe, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very interesting to go back and watch this as a guy and trying to relate to this character. And it's like, and it's interesting from that perspective. You know what I mean? Like, I guess we can more relate to the Gregory Peck character, but the story is really about the Audrey Hepburn character. She's kind of the star of the film. Everything in there is about her. The whole story revolves around her. I mean, so all of my favorite scenes kind of revolve around her. One of my favorite scenes, and it's kind of an iconic one. You can watch this clip on YouTube. You can watch this whole film on DVD. It's only available on DVD now. Hopefully, we'll get a Blu-ray release in the future. I mean, I get angry about this every time I have to watch this on DVD, because it's like, we have great locations. Why am I not watching this in the best quality possible? But one of my favorite scenes is the one where Gregory Peck sticks his hand inside of that statue with the disappearing, that will make your hand disappear, right? Apparently, that entire scene, it was in the screenplay, but what is improv and what was kind of a practical joke played on the Audrey Hepburn character was that when he pulled his hand out of that statue, his hand would be missing. Like, that wasn't supposed to happen. So her reaction to that is 100% pure. And I love hearing that, because you see how seamlessly the Audrey Hepburn character and the Audrey Hepburn person is in this film. The honest actress I felt throughout her career, and that scene kind of shows that she's the same. You know what I mean? She doesn't put on this face that a lot of people put on when they do characters or roles for movies. She's very genuine. You know what I mean? That's always what I felt about her characters. They're extremely genuine. I mean, Steven, do you have any favorite scenes? I mean, there's a bunch of scenes. I mean, this is a movie that has a huge brawl in it at a dance party.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, heading towards near the end of their night, they go to a dance party. Which earlier in the film, when she gets her hair cut, the barber invites her out for dancing, and they somehow stumble upon this dance party that she was invited to, and he's there, and this is where the people that are tracking down the princess finally find the princess and find her, and there ends up being a brawl between Gregory Peck and these guys, these, I guess you could say, Secret Service type of people that work for the princess and the crown, and it's a fun scene because you got the music going, you got just real cool fights. I mean, it's a good fight scene. They're kind of brutal, you know. People getting thrown around through the party and everything, and then they finally make a dive out into the river and get away, and then, you know, they have a laugh about it, and then there's a really nice romantic scene.
Yeah, and then the third act is where the romance really kicks into high gear, and you see that this day has become more than just, you know, palling around and goofing around. This has become a very endearing relationship over the day, and a very caring relationship. And you see kind of these two characters really expose who they truly are with one another. And there's a beautiful sequence when they are back in his apartment, and she's pretty much, you know, kind of bearing her soul in a way, but still hiding who she is. You know, in a perfect world, you know, she wouldn't have the obligations that she has, and that she knew she has to go back to. You know what I mean? And he knows that she has to go back. You know what I mean? Like, he's pretending he doesn't know, but he knows. And, you know, and in the perfect world, you know, they would be together, and they would grow old together, become a family, you know, live out in a house. You know what I mean? Just a very idealistic view of their future. But reality is what it is, and that is what I kind of like about this film the most. Is as much as it is very much a fantasy, is that reality is the end all be all of our world. You know what I mean? We can have all these dreams and all these wishes, but reality always kicks you back into itself. And at the end of this film, she has to go back to being the princess. He has to go back to being this journalist. And, you know, it's a very poignant scene when they're in the taxi cab, and she's telling him, you know, I'm going to go to that corner over there, but I'm going to turn, but I don't want you. I want you to just go away. Don't even look. Just go. Because she wants to keep this facade up as long as she can. She wants to keep this dream up as long as she can. And if she doesn't expose it at that moment, it's still real. You know what I mean? It's still real to her. Of course, the next day, she has that press conference that she had to reschedule, and he shows up as well as his friend. I mean, and this whole idea that he was going to expose her day on the town, you know, have this big, you know, expose or whatever, and make a lot of money off of her, is something that is not of interest to him anymore. You know what I mean? And I also like the fact that he pretty much tells his friend, you know, you can take these pictures, sell them to whatever magazine, newspaper you want to, probably make some money. But even his friend, upon seeing her once again as the princess, gives her the pictures and gives her the negatives. You know what I mean? They're keeping up that charade, but it's a nice scene where they know who each other truly are. You know what I mean? They have this magical day together, and it's something that is a nice bond between the three. And that's what I feel has always been a lasting moment for this film, has been that end, which is that reality gut punch, which is why I think this movie is so essential. Not just because it stars these big stars, but I think it's because it's a really good movie. You know what I mean? It's a film that is both light and heavy as well. Steven, do you agree?
Yeah, it's a very bittersweet ending. I mean, for a lot of people, I'm sure would have loved to seen them to get together and you know,
Live happily ever after.
Maybe Gregory Peck becomes the king or something. No, you know, but yeah, I mean, it's a bittersweet ending, but it's very, it's like you said, it makes a really good statement at the end there, and it's heartwarming, and it's like I said from the beginning, a charming film that it's just a delight. It's a delight.
It's a good movie.
It's a movie you can go back to over and over again and have fun with it, and you know, and not in a bad way, but it's a movie you can just put on and not even really pay attention to it, but keep looking up at moments that are your favorite. You
know? Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because it's a film that, like I said, is so rewatchable because of how charming and how easy it is to rewatch. And just the characters and the actors are great. William Wyler is a really good director too. This is the guy who directed Ben-Hur, which is just a monumental directorial production. of which we actually will do a video on eventually, once we have the time to tackle that a movie of that size, which is not easy, trust me. He also did the movie The Best Years of Our Lives, which was a Best Picture winner, I believe back in the 1940s, that deals with World War II and the generation that came back from World War II. He also did the film Funny Girl, which is another Audrey Hepburn film that was after this one, of course. So he is a really good and very well known director from the classic era of Hollywood. So yeah, I don't have much else to say about this film. All I can say is I recommend you watching it. If you've never seen an Audrey Hepburn film before, I think this is a great way to start. It is her first film. You get her for the first dose of her that everyone else got back in the early 1950s, and then you can progress from there and see her more iconic films, which are also very, very good and very delightful at times as well. Steven, anything else to say other than watch this movie?
Yeah, I mean, part of I guess the best thing I could say about why it's essential, other than that this is Audrey Hepburn's first film, and it's good to go and see where she started. I think, like a lot of these films, it laid the groundwork for the genre moving forward. Many films use the same, the same dynamic and the same, type of storyline many times over. I mean, like Overboard with Kurt Russell. I mean, very similar. Girl that gets away, has amnesia, goes in is fish out of water kind of thing, and that kind of fish out of water thing's used a bunch of times moving forward. And it's even the thing where they go through Rome and they're having this day is very reminiscent of the Before trilogy. That kind of stuff probably inspired Richard Linklater for that film. It's a lot of these films we talk about very influential in modern cinema. So this is another one that really has had a big influence. And like I said, the introduction of Audrey Hepburn it's an essential film to watch just because of that. So
yeah, if you are interested in watching this movie, like I said earlier, it is available on DVD here. This is the special edition with a couple of extra features and nice things like that. Hopefully, eventually one day we'll get a brand new release that'll have more to say about the movie and better quality and all this kind of stuff. But for now, that's kind of what we have here in the States, at least. But it doesn't take away from how great the film actually is. It's just a wonderful film. So that has been it. This has been another video in the very long 52 must-see movies and why they matter series. So if you like this video, please check out all of the other ones we've done. There will eventually be 52 of these, so it's plenty of viewing for all of your classic movie-loving hearts. So, Steven, where can people find you on this thing we call the internet?
This thing we call the internet can be found on Facebook and YouTube, Film Club Central, or Stephen Billings, me personally. So,
yes, you can find me on my own YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions, as well as on Twitter at Cabzilla06. And you can find all of these episodes here on our friend Dan Skip Allen's YouTube channel, Best Damn Movie Show, as well as the other video series we do, Top 5 Weekly, which we do a top 5 list of some type of theme every single week. So please check out all of that stuff, and we'll see you once again next time.